Okay, so patterns and universal. So the repetition is the key factor about patterns. So pattern is more something that you see repetitively, and over time you do see that there's a kind of a template that things work in a certain way. So this is just experience speaking and pointing towards some type of categories over time. So patterns are not necessarily, I mean, they're a category in the sense that it's kind of you summarize something, and that's why intuition is more in unity. But I will talk more that you can do like intuition or thinking on categories in all realms. But so I'll explain that further. But yeah, it can be conceptual patterns, natural patterns, behavioral patterns, auditory patterns, visual patterns, and so on and so on. So in topology, we can say that the patterns are spotted by the intuitive functions. So that's what I said. But at the same time, they are noticed and are part of the process of other function like the sensory, the feeling, and the thinking function. So they're still part of the process of noticing the patterns of other letters. And we can say that the patterns are a more intellectualized and proven sensory thinking, feeling, expression of intuition. So it's like the intuition alone cannot really categorize. It's really with the other that they can, and the patterns in themselves is more, express to the combination with other things. The realms, the specialization, and the experience are what makes you see more and more the patterns. So it's actually more. So some might feed the intuition even more. So the feeling might feed intuition even more. So we'll notice more patterns. Thinking intuition even more patterns. So they will be expressed in the forms of categories in either a stacking way or a spectrum way, symbolically. So that's why we have the introversion or the unity at the top. That is the NI. It's more about the forces, so it's more like force and observation. It is more about the category being pinned down, and on the spectrum, so it's more NU-like, more the multiplicity at the bottom gathering. You could say that the thinking function is about noticing patterns with the imposition of formula, and the feeling function with the imposition of priorities. The sensory is what proves the patterns and make you see them. So with that all being said, patterns can be in noticing patterns can be in all functions. So people have to really know that you can you can talk, you can gather, you can do a lot with all the letters, all the functions, but universally some functions and some letters are more about a specific thing. So that's why knowing universal, you kind of have two visions of reality in a way. Yeah, even three if you do it right. But most people will just have one. So they will just say, okay, patterns are in intuition, that's it. So, and me it's more, okay, patterns universally is more in intuition, but they can all notice patterns and they can all be about patterns. So it's more that you have kind of the universal and the actual experience. And because of that, you can leverage even more things, you can understand even more things, you have a better division of things, and you can actually summarize like in a more clean way, and just cleaner. So this is a word, yeah, I think it's more universal that I meant. That is a word that I universal in my description of things. Now it's kind of true, and I kind of sometimes mistake things like universal is more like applicable to a lot of things, and that is pinned down. So I also talk about universal that way, and sometimes I connect universal to kind of the forms of Plato. So I actually shouldn't do that. I kind of do that weirdly enough. I think it's more that in my mind I do have the category of universal, and I have kind of three ways to talk about universal, depending of what I mean. So I should stop doing that. But now in this video I will really say what I really think about universal in a way. So this is a hard one because you get it or you don't get it. So it's kind of true that universal is more with experiences and more kind of, it's more growth. I like universal, to be honest. Universal refer to the shared ideas we have towards something. So it's more the shared ideas towards something. So universal is more, okay, it's applicable to a lot of culture, applicable to a lot of things. So there's kind of that simple side of universal, and also yeah, so it's more, and also like more like the universal kind of thinking that we have about something. So we can call this the collective unconscious in some way. So that's more the universal that sometimes I refer to. So the simple universal is more like applicable towards a lot of culture, applicable towards a lot of things. That's more the first thing that I can talk about with universal. But the actual thing that I talk about universal, you can see the second thing, definition of universal that I really talk about. It's more like it's more the collective unconscious in some way. That okay, the sensory is more about the multiplicity. You know, sensory is more about the multiplicity universally, and that's really hard to get. It's more something that you have to train yourself with time. It's like okay, intuition is what universally is more introverted or it's more extroverted. If you're actually aligned, you would say intuition is more aligned with unity universally. So it's kind of more a tunini with the collective unconscious to some degree. So in typology, this is an ethnic play thing. So it's more like you're kind of channeling to what is applicable in the NF realm about a lot of things and unity in some sense. So it's kind of actually bringing the universal at the bottom applicable to a lot of things, and the universal at the top to what it actually mean, like what it actually mean actually to be what is actually the universal of sensory or intuition, and kind of breaking that in the middle. So the flood is an example of a universal pattern in religion where the land is destroyed by purification, chaos, divine wrath, and potential. So it's more the symbolization, of it. It is shared in most religions and conveys shared abstract images. So that's the first part of universal. And the second part of universal is when you think of sensory alone, do you think it's extroverted or introverted? It's extroverted and universal. So it's more the second part that I'm talking with universal. So universal refers to common sense, but in the any play NF terms. The trunk subjective reality of all people. That's more like the unity in observation and NF at the top that meet the reality of all people. So that's why universal can be complex when putting it that way, but yeah. Classic common sense is exterior, precise, societal ST things. We can also summarize universal by the meeting of symbols and awareness of patterns in ritual and in objectivity. So it's more, the meeting of the middle with the awareness of the patterns at the top. I don't know why I put objectivity. I guess the bottom too, but the meeting of the symbol already implied that. So maybe it's a little bit of an error. So what is right and universal about the content information and what it is implying in the pattern surrounding it? It's also not subjective by default because it sees the content information as a collective meaning. So you either get the universal or you don't get it. So it's not subjective. Actually, you can say it's kind of the objectivity of the NF. Universal is really the objectivity of the NF. That is applicable to a lot of things. So that's why it's subjective, but it's in the NF. So universal is really like objective in the NF, you can say, to really put it simply and really kind of memorize that in your mind. So universal can be compared to Plato ideas of forms. So that's not really true, even though I think the forms are more empty and about the unity. So that's the thing. Universal are more in the middle actually, while the Plato's form are more at the top, and Plato's form are more universally empty. So it's more universally empty. It's really the universal. It's not really a decision aspect or the observational aspect. It's really like the true universal of the pyramid that is about the empty in unity. While universal mediate the forms and my sense in the multiplicity and isolate them. So it's more the middle basically. Mediate all levels in the top and at the bottom. So universal as it speaks are the summaries of symbols, objectivity, rituals, and the forms. So I guess it's more the universal that is very like on steroid, that all levels are acknowledged within that. So it's more the universal of the universal, you can see. And this one is kind of very complex, but yeah. So there's more kind of the three definitions of universal. The simple one is more like it's applicable to a lot of things. So it's more the universal aspect of applying to a lot of things. The second one is more the unity in observation at the top. That kind of is more like a common sense NF or like objective NF at the top. It's more the second way to talk about universal. And the third way to talk about universal is more to say that the symbols at the top, in the middle, mediate all the forms. Not the forms, but all the symbols at the top and the bottom. So I mean, symbols are in the middle, but they do like embed things at the top and the bottom to be actually something in the middle. So universal will kind of mediate all that kind of triangle. So that's more the profound third definition of universal, yet that is very hard to kind of describe.